just Monday. I'm not sure why that's happening. Okay, I think it's over now. Okay. Something crazy is happening on StreamYard today, and I'm not sure exactly what it is. Okay, let me do this. All right. Okay, I think we're good now. All right, so what is an unstoppable overcomer? We put military spouses on a pedestal of strength and resilience, and that pedestal is well deserved. But how many of our transitioning and retiring military spouses feel like they are unstoppable when it comes to facing that final move into the civilian world after their active duty life comes to a close? Today, you're going to meet Dorothy O'Dell, a podcast host and producer of the Unstoppable Overcomers podcast. As a veteran ally, she has interviewed many service members who have faced trials and tribulations with unwavering determination, resilience, and courage. She's heard how they did it. She's heard what it took to make it through the hardest moments in their life. So today we're going to turn this conversation to what it means to be an unstoppable overcomer as a military spouse. And despite what you may have been told, it's not just about powering through, keeping it to yourself, or handling it all alone like you've always done. Thank you for joining me today for another Spouse Link live stream. I'm Anna Larson. I'm a Spouse Link ambassador, copywriter, digital marketer, homeschool mom, and a retired military spouse. These live streams are for other military spouses looking for connection and support as they near and cross over into transition or retirement. Spouse Link was created in 2012 by AFMA, the American Armed Forces Mutual Aid Association, and their mission is to support, inform, and inspire military spouses around the world. So as we dive into today's topic, please drop me a comment, share your experiences, let us know where you're coming from. I would love to hear from you. I value what you have to say, and we are really looking forward to having you comment, join in on the conversation, and share what you know about being an unstoppable overcomer. So, all right. Now that we've got StreamYard under control and that intro out of the way, I am going to pull up Dorothy's, I'm going to pull up her bio slide so I can tell you a little bit about her. All right. So Dorothy is a child of God, wife, stepmom, and loving daughter. She is a bookkeeper by trade, has over 24 years of experience. She just wrote her first book called The Overcomer Facing Challenge with Faith and Courage. It hit the top 100 international bestseller list on Amazon on its very first day of release. She shares her obstacles of overcoming being bullied in school for her weight, low self-esteem issues, growing up with sick parents, the trauma of her uncle's suicide, and leaving an emotionally abusive relationship. Never give up, because in the end, there is true happiness. Dorothy hopes that this book will help others overcome their obstacles and know that they are not alone in their struggles. She also does speaking engagements on these topics as well. Unstoppable Overcomers, which is her live show, showcases other people who have overcome their obstacles and helped others along the way. She's met some incredible people and built lifelong friendships. She started the show to give platform to other people so they would know that they are never alone in their circumstances. She's taking her veteran series and pitching it to networks so she can get eyes on the huge issue of veteran suicide. We are losing 44 veterans a day, and it is Dorothy's mission to eradicate that number. Big thumbs up for that, Dorothy. Along with her husband, Joe, and stepson, she resides in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. So yes, we've got a Canadian on our show today. Her mission is to eradicate homelessness and bring awareness of more topics that people think are taboo, because taboo will not do. So, okay, after that bio, I just have to tell you, the first time I met Dorothy, we had such a great chitter chatter. She is fantastic. You are going to love this woman. She has so much to say. She does have a little bit of a fun Canadian accent, so you're going to love that too. So without further conversation, let me get Dorothy up here to stage.
Hello, Anna. Thank you so much. And thank you for that amazing introduction. I need to cut that bio in half. And, and I'm not the one with the accent you guys are.
It depends on what side you're talking, because it's my show. We get to say you have the accent for this
All
one.
right, I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one.
Well, Dorothy, so let's listen. Dorothy and I have been trying to do this live stream for like what? I think it's been like 4 months or something
Yes.
like that. And
Yes.
we have been blocked and had to delay and then reschedule, and then it delayed again and rescheduled. So when we talk about unstoppable overcomers, like I feel like you two, like I'm talking to somebody other than myself, us two are like the poster child right now for this show when it comes to getting this show out there. Something wanted it to not happen. I swear.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I went through something that was horrific, like I'd never before, and then you got sick and it was just like, oh my gosh, like seriously. If you've ever been eaten by like a million mosquitoes at one time, you'll understand, especially if you're allergic. So anyways, we're not going to go back there again, but it was quite something.
So, Dorothy, before we get started into our actual conversation, I do have a question for you. Can you tell me how your work with veterans got started? Because you are not yourself a veteran, correct?
I am not a veteran myself. However, I do have family members that have served, both in the Navy and the Armed Forces, and currently have family members that serve. So I am not a veteran, but good question. And I didn't even realize just how important my veteran community was until last Veterans Day, when I was trying to put together the veteran slide that I had going. And the reason how I started all this back January 31st of last year, I had Greg Bicknell on my show, who is a 28-year Air Force veteran. He had attempted suicide multiple times. And when he reached out for help, he was told to make an appointment. So if anybody who knows Greg Bicknell knows that just lit a fire under his butt, and I'll keep it PG. And so he's just like, he went to his commanding officer and says, there's a problem and I'm going to take care of it. And his officer's like, okay, what's going on? And so he made it his life mission to make sure that nobody else had that same reaction when asking for help, right? Because multiple attempts of suicide, and then he finally gets up enough. I'm not going to say, I don't know. Courage. Thank you. Enough courage.
Yeah.
To say, hey, I need help. And then he's, just make an appointment. And like, wow, that would have been a slap in the face. And then of course, transitioning out of the military and things like that. All that brings, the stress that brings. And so he has started a nonprofit, which was Camaraderie Rescue Mission. So he's coming on my show. Greg is very animated. Greg can sell ice to an Eskimo. And so when he told me his story and how he told it, I'm like, I need to get on board with this. Didn't know why. I just knew that, yes, I'm Canadian and yes, he's American, but I just knew that our veterans obviously need help. And so I became co-chair on his board. And then I just started, he led me to somebody, I think it was Carrie Stewart, who led me to Jeffrey Knight of Angels 14, who led me to so many other veterans and each one, it was like the common denominator is like, there's an issue and let's fix it. And instead of putting a Band-Aid on this, no, because I don't, there's 136 suicides per day. That's including civilians, 44 of which are veterans. And I'm like, okay, so there's a huge problem mental health wise in this nation, and let's just eradicate it all. But I'm a firm believer, like, these guys gave up their lives for us, so why wouldn't we help them?
Yeah. Well, I love your mission and 1,000,000% support it. And I love that you're not a random person, but I love that as someone who's tied to the military community, maybe not really like immersed in it all the time, that you saw this need and you ran with it. And I love what you do. I've listened to a number of your podcasts. I had the honor of being on your short form business one, which I really enjoyed. But I mean, these stories, these unstoppable overcomer stories that you share are truly inspiring and amazing. So, all right. So let me ask you our very first question, which is, how would you, Dorothy, describe or define the term unstoppable overcomer?
So we all go through things in life, and we might not think that we're overcoming them, but we are. Every day and every time you overcome something, you're an overcomer. And so to be unstoppable means that you don't give up. You keep pushing through those barriers, those times. And sometimes those moments are dark, and sometimes it could be like even just taking a breath in the next second and counting those seconds, right? And so being an unstoppable overcomer is just that, just continuing to keep on going no matter what. Plug through.
Yeah. You know, in the military world, especially as military spouses, one of the things they talk about all the time is, oh, how resilient they are, how resilient military families are. Oh, military spouses, they can put up with anything. They're so resilient, right? And so when I think unstoppable overcomer, the word that it's synonymous with in my military spouse life is the word resilience. You know, somebody who has those coping skills, that can find resources and then utilizes them to the best of their ability, asks for help, finds ways to manage situations that they're facing. But it's not always like that, right? Like, yes, we are resilient, but it's not always that easy. You know what I mean? And so when there's this label placed on us of, you are a resilient person, therefore you can handle this, sometimes we don't find that strength, or we just muscle through, and it's depleting and almost devastating, right?
Absolutely. You know, and it's funny that you said that, because think of all the people like Robin Williams, always had a smile on his face, but ended up completing suicide. So, you know, I think yes, it's one thing to be resilient, and we're known for that. However, it's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to share, hey, you know, I'm not okay today. And you know, I was listening to Brene Brown, and she said that her and her husband have this thing where it's like the 80-20 rule. If they come into the house and they ask each other like where they're at, like if only each of them have 20%, they ask each other, well, how can they bring the other one up to reach the other 80%, or at least give each other grace to do that, right? And not attack each other. And that was always been in the back of my mind, right? And because we are such powerhouse people, and military for sure, because they're told to suck it up and get it back out there. They're told, you know, don't show your feelings, don't do this, don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, they're trained to kill. But, you know, then they come out into the civilian world, and what do? They have no skills. They get a 2-week course, I'm told, to here's 2 weeks, and take that and go back into the civilian world and have a nice day. And I'm like, really?
Yeah. So, I mean, the transition experience, of course, differs for everyone, right? In that sense, as far as, I mean, but it is definitely one of those throw you feet first, and you think you know what you're getting into, and you've been so excited about this, and then it just kind of smashes you. But okay, yeah. So when we talk about being resilient, then what kind of misconceptions would you say there are about that word? Like, I mean, when people say that word, they expect you to be a certain thing or a certain way. And I love that you already said it doesn't mean you can't be vulnerable, because that is a huge thing, right?
Right. And so in interviewing all my guys, men and women, I call them guys, like we're one big happy family. And they've adopted me, I've adopted them, and you know, that's just the way life is. And so every single time I have interviewed somebody, they always say the misconceived notion is that they're the hero. The unsung heroes are actually the spouses at home, putting everything together. They're resilient at home. They have the kids, they have jobs, most of them, and then when their spouse can show up, then it's like, oh yeah, now I have to, cater to their needs too. And so in every interview that I've done, every single veteran has told me that the misconception is that they're the hero. It's actually their spouse that's the hero.
So as a military spouse, I truly love hearing that, because I appreciate that service members see what their spouses are doing for them, how hard they work to try and keep home stable for them. I know that when we are talking about the resilience of a military spouse, a lot of times people think, oh, it means if you're super resilient, you don't have that kind of anxiety, or you don't experience distress in those ways. They're like, oh, you either have resilience or you don't have resilience, which I also don't believe, right? I truly believe you can learn how to be more resilient as well. A lot of people equate it with doing things just by yourself, like going it alone, like powering through something and never showing weakness. Also, or not sharing feelings or sharing experiences that maybe are less than flattering for you or your relationship or your lifestyle. But
Right.
I think those things ultimately in the end are harmful, right? I mean, and they end up causing more harm than good when it comes to really being able to overcome, not just power through, but overcome the situations. Have you had any experiences where that's been kind of like where you've seen that in action, I guess would say?
Yeah, when you were talking, there's a couple things that came to my mind immediately. Like, because when the spouse is in the service, they have their camaraderie, they have their connections, they have their guys, right? They can talk. The spouses, some I've heard, they get their, like, the spouse groups going and things like that, and they need that tribe in order to survive as well. There's no way you could go this alone. There's no way you could go, if your husband or wife is deployed for a year to 5 years, there's no way you could go take care of everything and then still have that frame of mind, okay, he's going to be okay or she's going to be okay. And whether you think you're on edge or not, I'm sure as a military spouse you must be like just praying every day for your spouse while they're gone. So having that added stress, you're going to need your tribe around you. You're going to need your the spouses at home to have that connection and things like that. So I think it's really important, whether you're in the military world or where you're in the civilian world, to have that tribe around you. And I think that is important, because that only right there shows you're resilient, because you're really going back and forth and you're helping each other. And no matter what, I mean, when you became the spouse of somebody who is an active duty member, I mean, you had to have known a little bit of what you were getting yourself into. I would have hoped you would have done your homework.
Not necessarily. I married my guy and he was just in the reserves and then went active. I had no clue what I was getting into. So that is not always the case.
Well, Anna, thank you for saying that, because that just proves that communication is key and we should look at everything before we get married.
Yes, exactly. I love Megan's thing, right? Like, we don't have a checklist. It's not like every time we go somewhere new or do something new, it's like you have to create an entirely new experience for yourself, because it's always different, right? And so saying I'm just going to power through by myself, or not sharing those feelings, like, I love what you're saying, right? I mean, okay, so just to skip ahead just for a minute, our next question is, what are the key components to overcoming challenges? I feel like we're talking about that right now, because you mentioned a couple of them, right? Like building a community or being involved in a community, your tribe, your milspouse community, finding those friends. Like, I can honestly say that I mean, I have military friends from early in our military journey that I would call a family. They're my ride and dies, right? They're the ones I'm calling above and beyond anyone else in my life. If I need somebody, they're the ones that are jumping the plane, getting in their truck, driving directly to my house, right? Bringing the shovels and the body bags with them, like whatever it is, right?
I love that.
Yes. So you mentioned community, and then you just now mentioned also this. Oh my gosh, it just flew out of my head. What we were just talking about. Do you remember?
Oh, it's each of you guys having your own tribe, which I guess is a community.
Yeah, there was one other thing. Okay, we'll think about it. But what else would we add to that? Key components. Like when you talk to these service members, these veterans, these overcomers, do you find like commonalities between them for how they're able to overcome the things in their life?
Great question. Because as I'm thinking of each one, and they're all special to me, they're all like my brothers or sisters. I think the one thing that they all have in common is, they just plow through it, right? They find a way to do it. And I think maybe I've built that connection with them because that's all I've ever done. That's all I've ever done, is I just plow through like a bull, like gone through it. And I've realized that not everybody has that. Right. And some people don't have any idea, and then they're stuck, and then they're like, they freeze. And so each person though that I've interviewed, it's just, the one thing is they always knew that their military family had their back.
Oh,
and so
I'm gonna just heart that.
right,
Big heart that.
exactly. Yeah. Right. And so, and then I come along, and I've been in this world for almost 2 years now, and I'm just like, yes, I have their back and they have my back. And it's funny because some of the groups that I belong to, the veteran groups that I belong to, a couple of them are like, I really need a new job. It's not working out. And I'm like, but, I don't want this to be leaked because I don't want my boss to find out. Right. And so I'm like, I got you. Don't worry about it. Send me your resume. And I'm always networking. Always, 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 always. So the other day, a headhunter calls me out of the blue. And I'm just like, okay, where's this going to go? So I'm listening to this guy. I'm like, what do you need? He happens to be, he's a veteran as well. I'm like, well, are you just looking for veterans or civilians, or whom are you looking for? So half an hour later, I send him 2 resumes over for my veterans and my veteran allies that are needing a job. And I think it's just, keeping your ear to the ground no matter what, and just finding out what others' needs are, and then filling those needs.
Okay, so we've listed out, find a community.
Yeah.
I hear support others by doing what you can for them. Networking and connecting is going to be a big part of that. I mean, these are all relationship based almost components to overcoming, if that makes sense, right? It's all based on like creating relationships, or having a relationship with someone, or relying on a relationship with someone to help power through that. And what I love about that is that I think that so many times we feel like we have to do this alone. Like, cannot air our dirty laundry, can't tell everybody how miserable we are, can't say we hate this world that we live in currently, and want to kick everything to the curb right now. I can tell you that as a military spouse, there were one deployment in particular was incredibly difficult. And I legit shut my door and locked it and closed all my blinds. And my kids sat in front of a TV for about 48 straight hours, other than bedtime and cold cereal that they got for meals, because I just was done. I needed that break. I could not process. I couldn't deal anymore. I couldn't do it right at that moment. And I needed that break. But I was afraid to reach out, right? It was almost like if I reached out, then I was admitting some sort of weakness. If I
I
reached
get that.
I was admitting that I wasn't as strong as everybody thought I was, or I wasn't as good of a military spouse as everybody thinks I am. Or, it's not even really about what they think of you. It's just that perception of what, that label of what being a resilient military spouse is all about. And so what I love about this conversation we're having is break that label down. Like that is not what resilience or overcoming means. It does not mean you have to stand on this pedestal of perfectness and be able to handle everything with grace and dignity and without tears and maybe a little drama. I mean, I would have to say sometimes there's going to be a little drama, right?
But I have to say, okay, so you handled it the best way you knew how at the moment. Having tools that you now have, I'm sure that would have been different if you would have known now what you knew then. Just saying that. And so not making ourselves wrong in how we handle a situation. And sometimes like we lied to ourselves. And so in that moment, that's just what happened. And your kids are alive to tell about it. Yeah. So everybody's fine.
Cold cereal for 48 hours doesn't hurt a thing.
And cereal really is not that bad. I mean, they could have ate dirt for 48 hours instead, but no, they had a semi-nutritionist cereal. So really, in the grand scheme of things, you overcame and you were unstoppable because it only lasted for 48 hours and, life was okay after that. But as you're saying that, there's some things that's coming to mind. I think it was Megan that said something about you guys don't have a checklist. I'm thinking, well, not everything is going to be the same. But what if we did create for our military spouses some kind of a checklist so that they can at least have somewhat, like, I don't know if it was you or if it was somebody else that told me that they, when they transitioned, that because the military, like you're just given a doctor and stuff like that. Like you didn't even I don't know if it was you, so please forgive me, but somebody said they didn't even know how to get a doctor off base.
That was me. Yeah. That was all me.
But that's what you knew. That's what you knew for however, 20 plus years or however long it was that your spouse was in the military. So it's not that was wrong. It's just like, okay, so how are we going to find a doctor, right? And so maybe if we create this checklist for the spouses, maybe this is the legacy we leave to them. I don't know. Hey, I'm open to everything because, like I said, I'm connected with so many different groups that if it helps this group, it's going to help somebody else. At least it's a starting point instead of having nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say yes, I think that those checklists do exist. In fact, I'm going to drop after our live stream today, I'm going to drop in the transition timeline checklist that was created for the military families that is provided by AFMA, who's, sponsors Spouse Link, powers Spouse Link and this show. But it's a great place to start because at least it gives you something to reach for, right? In those moments where distress can happen. But yes, I think part of it is sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yep.
And for me, learning how to reach out and call a doctor that wasn't a PCM that was assigned to me and transferred every 4 to 6 months, right? I mean, that was new to me. I'd done that for 20 years. That was my normal. And so having to call someone new and then I think one of the funniest parts was when my bestie says, if you don't like them, you don't have to go to them. I'm like, I don't, even after I made an appointment. She's like, no, you could fire your doctor. I'm like, that blew my mind because that was not even something I'd even really considered as a military spouse. It wasn't, So I think it's part of it is just, when you do, Megan also mentioned about just getting comfortable asking for that assistance. And that's what I hope maybe is one of the primary takeaways from our show today is don't be afraid to ask for help, because being an unstoppable overcomer doesn't mean you have to do it all alone, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay. Exactly. And that's one of the things that I've had to learn to do, because I'm 47. For 40 of those years, I did everything myself.
Yeah.
and relied on only myself. And but that doesn't make it right or wrong. It just, that's what I knew back then, and now I know
Yeah.
something different.
Well, and I think that there's almost an expectation sometimes that you will do it on your own, that you will take care of it. I very much grew up with a mom that was like, buck up, get it done, just do it, right? And it is that power through mentality, um, and don't rely on someone else, because if you do and it doesn't get done, you're still responsible for that, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, okay, let's transfer to our very last question that we have today. I want to talk about relationships just a little bit. So when we're talking about unstoppable overcoming, and especially within the military spouse and the transition and retirement time frame, there are conversations that need to be happening. And while we're not talking about you can't do it alone, transition and retirement is definitely not a solo sport, right?
Nope.
And so, what kind of conversations, what are the things that unstoppable are going to create unstoppable overcomer couples? So, these service members and their spouses or their partners that they have gone through this military life with, now they are at that point where it's time to transition. What do they need to be talking about? What is it that they need to, what conversations do they need to be having, Dorothy?
Well, a conversation period would be good, because I know a lot of people don't even want to have that conversation with their spouse. So even opening up those communication lines, and from several of the people that I've interviewed, it's just like, yeah, well, it just kind of happened. And I'm like, well, did you have a conversation with your spouse? Well, no. And I'm like, okay. So communication is key, no matter what, right?
Yeah.
And so in those communications, though, breaking it down, like, what does it look like? And writing, I'm not even going to say goals, because really, is the spouse just going to take some time off before transitioning into finding another job, or or are they just truly retiring? And what does retirement look like for both of you? Being on the same page, like, because retirement for them might be something totally different than retirement for you. You might want to go travel the world, and they might go, yeah, no, I need to just decompress for a couple months and see what this looks like. But making sure that you're on the same page, making sure that each of you talk about what you see it looks like, and just really not being afraid to have those conversations with your spouse, or what it might trigger them. Okay, so it triggers them, so that you deal with the trigger. Right.
And you're like, might trigger them, then you go on, you move on with it, you figure it out, you keep going.
You keep on being unstoppable, and you go on to the next thing, and they might be pissed off at you, and they might not talk to you for a couple of days, and then you have silence, and silence is golden, and then you move on. But you don't stop at that, right? Until you both have a plan of action, right? And I highly recommend that. Like, there's so many great support groups out there, that you both join them. And I know there's even in first responders. So I know this is male spouse, but I also deal with first responders as well. And it's the same thing. The spouse needs something, and so does the one that was on active duty, service member. Thank you. And so there are different groups out there that will service both. So finding those groups, if you need help with that, let me know. I mean, I've got access to a couple of them. And so we can get you the help you need for that too. But, because I mean, you spent however many years, 20 plus years in the military together. And then now here it is. Now it's life outside of the military. And now you're both like, oh shit, now they're home. Are they going to be stepping on top of me the entire time now? How am I going to live with that? Right? How am I going to handle them being home all the time? Because you're used to not being home. And now you're home 24/7. And it's yay. you've been wanting this, and now that you have it, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah, you're speaking my language right now, right? Like here I am, he retired in 2021, and the plan had always been getting another job or and traveling all over the world, and then retirement happened and real life was still there, where traveling all over the world didn't happen, and some medical things were forefront, so getting a job straight away also wasn't there. And boy, did our transition plan change from what we always had dreamed of and talked about together over here to reality, which looks a ton different than it did. So I will say yes. When you transition, you will find yourself being an unstoppable overcomer. And I agree with you, Dorothy, that starting the conversations is like the number one key, right? Because if I don't express dissatisfaction or satisfaction with the way things are going, or how we're functioning as a family, because it's very different when they are home all the time. It is very different. There's no deployment to count on to save your marriage.
Have them go to their mom's for the weekend.
if their mom even lives close, right? He would have to fly for like 8 hours to get to his mother's house, and it would probably be a lot longer than a weekend. But yes, like just reminding yourself that being a couple again does not mean doing it alone, right? Like It doesn't mean that you have to just power through and drag them along behind. Like have those conversations and take the time to remember why you're together, maybe even in the first place,
I was going to say that, something just came to my mind because, you built this life together. And like you said, they were gone and now they're home and you want them home, and they come home a different person, right? Yeah. And they're expected to just transition and everything's fine. And some get the help that they need and some don't because they're in denial right away. And that's fine. Love them through it. And, just continue to be open to the conversation. And I get that you might be frustrated. And that's why you have your tribe. You go just talk to your tribe, and don't bring that frustration into the marriage right away until you're through it, and then you can calmly talk to them about it, because they're dealing with their shit, and now some of them don't have their buddies around anymore, and they need to find a way how to deal with that. Depending on, I'm not saying everybody that leaves the military is in PTSD, but the ones that are, they need to help with that. And some of them don't even recognize that they need the help until they do. And so just,
I would say it's almost fair to say though, that everyone that transitions out of the military from active duty service to retirement, or just transitioning out in general, I do think they go through a process of loss. Right? Yes. Like a norm that they're used to, and then a loss, whatever that might look like for them, whether it's about their community or their identity or their mission and purpose, or their, are they important anymore? Do people understand, their value? Those kinds of things are faced by both service members, by the military spouse, and by the military children. All three components that you might find within a family. I mean, heck, I think my dogs were even a little depressed when it came down to it. They were like, I don't understand what's going on here. The whole family's in uproar, right? And so I think literally every member of your family can be affected by this. So, absolutely. Okay. Dorothy, what a fabulous conversation today. I love this because I think that ultimately the end takeaway is we are all unstoppable overcomers. That if you're not giving up, if you're continuing to seek resources, if you're finding your community, if you're reaching out, if you're even powering through it and doing it yourself, no, you don't have to do that, but that you are still, even if you're doing that, still an unstoppable overcomer. And I, for one, am proud to be part of your military spouse community and to see you doing this and thriving as a transitioning or retiring spouse. So let's let everyone know how to find you. And let me pull this slide up really quick. All right. Can you tell everyone the best place to find Miss Dorothy O'Dell?
Well, the best place is generally LinkedIn or my website, because if you fill out the connect with me thing, I'll definitely get it and I'll connect with you. But I'm generally on LinkedIn the most. And so that would be the best place to get a hold of me. And go check out our YouTube channel, because I'm telling you, go check out Anna's episode that I had Anna on, because I'm telling you, that was pretty wild. That was a good episode too.
That was a good episode. I enjoyed it so much. I just dropped right into the comments that link for the podcast. I think I was episode like 78 or something like that. I don't know. It was fun. It was a fun conversation. But if you just need a little pick-me-up, if you want to just hear a little something about, the way other people do it, get some ideas, get some feel-good, pat yourself on the back and say, oh, wow, I'm doing it right today.
Yes.
You need a little bit of that. Go check out Dorothy's podcast, because she is fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today as well. We certainly appreciate having you here with us and joining in on our conversation. And so our next podcast. So now we're entering our live stream, I should say. We're entering into the holidays. So there's two more that I want to do. One where we're going to do just a Christmas cheerful, where I would love for you to come and meet all of our Spouse Link ambassadors. And then I have another one that I'm working on right now, where it is kind of that big family binder, that everyone needs. The one that has all that information that's super important, where if you were lost, if your car breaks down, if you're moving, all the things that you would need in order to make sure that your family is on the right track. We're going to have a podcast or a live stream about that in just a couple of weeks. So, Dorothy, thank you for being here with us today. I look forward to hearing and seeing more from you. And with that, we will say goodbye and have a great rest of the day.